All my stuff's going off.
All right, here we are. I finally got at least hopefully enough signal for me to interview one of my all-time favorite people, one of my biggest, most fabulous heroes, one of the greatest
Shoot.
people that exactly. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, good.
I'm
But you're
here, but
wonderful, and you
I don't
have been running Pathways to Recovery for how long?
26 years.
Wow, and that's a
Right.
long time to be dealing with people who meet you on the worst day of their lives.
Ooh, well, yeah, but I love that. I love it.
Yeah. So tell us what Pathways to Recovery is, and then people will realize how amazing you are.
No, I'm not amazing at all. So, actually, Pat, you're amazing. So, Pathway to Recovery is in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we have 6 housing programs that represent 3 phases, and we house and help homeless adults with substance abuse and mental health issues. And our goal is to help them become clean and sober, emotionally stable, and financially self sufficient, and permanently housed in substance free, safe, affordable housing. That's what we do.
Right. So you have purchased buildings all across Indianapolis, and you
Yes.
have created apartments. And tell us how the program works.
So we have 6 buildings that we've purchased. And when we acquired them over time, over the last 25 years, these were buildings that were originally vacant, boarded up, dilapidated, crime infested. Um, so so we kind of get to make the case that even if your heart doesn't go out to the disenfranchised, we're not only transforming lives, but we're transforming neighborhoods. So we get to make the case for the economic development piece. For example, we have a couple of multifamily properties that we bought, 22 and 24 years ago that we paid. One of them we bought for $10,000. We
Wow.
put grant money in, completely rehabbed it. They're building properties around it today for $750,000.
Wow.
I know that's a good investment. So, but the point is, we actually create this stable housing within, not the best areas, and they become kind of this stabilizing force. And you can watch these communities transform while we bring in, 10 to 20 drug and alcohol free, paying their own way. I like to call them Crime Stoppers because you can't get over on our guys. Been there, done that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've had tough lives that they've come to you to help, and no harm, no foul. This is not judgment, but some of these guys have done some stuff that, in fact, we're going to talk to a guy who had a pretty tough life, and he came to Pathways, and now he's helping other guys get clean and sober. And so these people are people who want to put their lives back together, and you give them a building to live in where everybody has the same goal, so that the next lady down in the next apartment over doesn't bring in 10 bottles of booze or
Right.
operate a crack house out of the apartment, right? So they know that their whole environment is safe, even though they're basically private tenants renting from you guys. You're their landlord, and they have a. This is the thing I find remarkable. You, they're employed or they have an income, and you charge them what they can afford.
That's exactly right. And um, what's pretty awesome is there's 94 men and women off the streets housed at Pathway. And our team consists of 4 full-time staff, one property guy, a couple of part-timers, and a bunch of program graduates that act as peer support. These are men and women who have come through the program. They're clean and sober, paying their own way, doing great, and they literally give back. That's the reason we're able to do what we do with only, a half a dozen staff people, 6 buildings, and almost 100 clients because of our volunteers. Um, And the thing about it is, so yeah, the guys and gals, we've all made bad decisions. I'm also in recovery, um, a former alcoholic and drug addict. Actually, not former. I just don't use today. But the point is, um, by giving ourselves purpose and able to help the next guy, which is actually built into our program, it reminds me of where I came from, and it lets that new person realize that, hey, wait a minute, I knew you from back in the day, and if you can make it, and you've got your own apartment, you've got this great job, you seem to have dignity and self-respect today, and if you can do it because I seen where you came from, then maybe I can do it too. So there's a lot of awesome little kind of nuances that we didn't really plan for. I mean, Pathway was really just this grassroots effort that grew 30 years ago when we found out the guys and gals that are homeless that have addiction and mental illness were falling through the cracks. I mean, we had drug and alcohol programs on one side, we had mental health programs on the other side. We didn't have anything that kind of took a holistic approach to everything. And you know what's amazing to me is the notion of, and get this, the notion of outpatient to do with homelessness. I never quite understood that concept. Um, so the first thing we do is we're going to not only put a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food in your stomach, but we're going to give you a family environment. We're going to do all the professional intake assessment. What are your needs? Let's prioritize your needs. And you know what? We're not going to push you out the door to get a job day one. We're not even going
Mm.
to let you go look for a job day one. Um, you're going to be grounded. You're going to be grounded with us, and we're going to practice not drinking and not drugging for several months. And you're going to practice, we're going to practice talking to the guy next to us. We're going to learn how to give support, get support. And then we're going to slowly get back into the community, and we're going to slowly do employment activities. And then when we get to that phase, again, we're going to learn, well, how do I budget? Because now that I haven't had any money, I really like a new outfit. Well, you know what? The thing with addiction, and I'm speaking for myself too, we are notorious for putting our wants in front of our needs. Okay. So with Pathway, we're going to flip the script and we're going to go, yeah, I'd really like to go buy something new to feel better because I don't have drugs and alcohol. But in reality, I'm going to have to learn how to pay rent, just like reality. And another cool thing is, out of these 6 programs, they're all self-funded except one. I don't have
Wow.
to. Um, I call myself a professional panhandler. I don't have to like raise money for 5 of our programs. The guys and gals that live there keep the doors open. So there's a lot of stuff, and I know my
Wow.
answers are
And do
very
they pay
long.
for that with their rent? Is that
Par-
how it's paid? The programs pay for they pay for it with their rent?
Yeah, the guys and gals all pay rent based on their ability. Um, and the thing is, we don't care about your credit history. We don't care about your criminal history. Okay, we are all in this together, and you get to start here. And usually, the guys and gals stay in our permanent housing programs for an average of 3 years before they go on to home ownership.
Wow. Wow. So what are the obstacles they face? I mean, a guy, first of all, some people who really want to start over, and a lot of people really want to start over, but they don't get to because all the other things of addiction stop them. But they've decided this is it. They must feel like they've won the lottery when they get in the door at Pathway. But are there obstacles? Do you lose some people back out the door that came in and thought they were going to be able to make it? And you know what? Other things does that happen to other things drag them down?
So the reality is this: addiction is really complicated, and you can't really apply logic or common sense to it. And I would love for people to consider the fact of the well-known celebrities and sports figures that have had every type of financial resource, family, friends, emotional support, access to every resource possible, and they've lost their lives due to substance abuse. So I would just like to point out that it's kind of like a but for the grace of God go I, you know. So you add substance abuse and you add homelessness and you add criminal justice barriers and you add untreated mental illness, and heck yeah, we lose people, you know. Um, and the thing is, we try real hard to understand that relapse can be part of it, but our response shouldn't be punitive. You know, well, hey, I didn't take my whatever. I had too much sugar today, so my diabetes is acting up. So, you know, let me have to go sleep in the woods over that. So it's kind of the
Right.
same way, right? I mean, seriously, addiction is a lifelong chronic illness. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not responsible for my treatment. Okay, but I've got to have the resources and the help. And if we keep in mind all of the very well-to-do people that lost their lives over it, how are we going to expect people with nothing to kind of just, you know, Nancy told us just say no, right? Um,
Right. Right.
but
Yeah.
it didn't work. So we try to open the door really wide. And yeah, if you stumble and if you fall, you know what? Let's get back up. Let's figure out what we can do to build a safety net. Let's go at it again. About half the people that come through pathway, the entry level program, about half make it to the point of substance free, mentally stable, financially self sufficient, and move on to the next phase. That's huge. To get half is huge. And if people are
Great.
kind of touting other statistics bigger than that, I'd want to maybe drug screen the people giving those reports. Okay, I take that back. But
Well,
but
you said that thing about famous people. Yes.
go ahead.
You said that famous people, and all I ever think of is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Right.
Because I saw an interview with him. You know, he was made famous so many different things. He was in Truman. He played Truman Capote. He was just an amazing actor. And I saw him on a 60 Minutes, and he said he had been drug free for 20 years.
Right.
And that was about a year before he died of a heroin overdose. And
that's exactly right.
It just devastated me because I thought, okay, if he was telling the truth in his interview, which it's his whatever, but if he was telling the truth, something 20 years later was still such a huge attraction of his addiction that he fell and died and paid the ultimate price for just being a human being. It's heartbreaking.
So I don't think so. Times are different nowadays. People not only relapse, but we have an opioid epidemic. So when you are homeless and addicted, there's a really good chance that there's a Russian roulette going on, but there's only one chamber empty. That's kind of how it is nowadays. And our guys are not, you know, in their 50s nowadays. They're in their 20s and they're in their 30s. And they've kind of lost everything, and
Wow.
it's all over opioid addiction. I mean, we have a lot of kids that have lost everything because the opioid addiction is so strong and it's so different than anything we've ever seen. So I believe that, you know, the celebrities that end up overdosing. Here's the thing: they don't. I don't think they mean to. Not for 1 minute. It's 1 second of an impulsive decision, and it costs you your life. And it used to not be like that with alcohol or other drugs. I mean, sure, we would lose people, but this is a different ball game today. And I think they say now overdoses kill homeless people probably 9 out of 10 times quicker than the guys and gals that are, you know, stably housed in it. There's just a lot of different factors that have to go into it. And I think our community needs to understand that we've got to stop, you know, blaming the person that doesn't have any resources, and expecting them to do something different when they don't even know how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really important point because once a person, and when people ask me, well, everybody homeless is a drug addict or a drunk, right? And I always say, wait a minute, I could take you to a house and show you a drunk. I can take you to a house and show you a drug addict. I can take you to a house and show you someone with mental illness. The real difference between the person with an addiction that you see on the street and the person with addiction you see in a house is how much money they have.
That's
Do they have
exactly right.
do they have enough money to support their addiction and their housing? And if they and so there are millions of people on the street who are children, who are
That's
families
right.
doubled up, living with their grandmother. There are all kinds of people who don't fall into any of these categories. It's just that the most desperate individuals are the ones who don't care if you see them anymore. There are
Right.
a lot of people who are homeless or in hiding, and you can't find them, and you may even work with them. And when you say, "Where do you live?" they lie to you. They don't say, "I live under the bridge." They say, "I live on 32nd Street." And then they lie to you about where they live because it's none of your business that they're homeless. But so that you are just surrounded by homeless people. And it's the people with the truly desperate situations that just don't care anymore if you see them. And those are the people you see more easily, the people on the street. And those, I imagine that you get people into Pathway who other people didn't know were homeless, that come to you, and they're not a person that was standing on one of the on ramps. They had an addiction problem. They come to you, but they're not the publicly homeless.
So
Or is everyone that comes to you pretty much?
no, so everybody we get um we get residents through numerous sources, and we're always at capacity, and we always have a waiting list. And you would think that that would be a clue to demonstrate that we have an unmet need in Indianapolis. Um, so one of the primary referral sources that we had was called the Rubin Engagement Center, which opened 3 years ago, and it was meant to be an alternative to the constant recycling through the emergency rooms and the jails for homeless individuals with addiction. So it took about 40 years for Indianapolis to finally get our act together where we could add 30 beds to divert people from the hospitals and the jails and give them a chance for 3 to 5 days to start a new life. And then they could be funneled into Pathway. Sadly, April 10th of this year, under the guise of COVID, Rubin, the city of Indianapolis, closed their doors. They put a sign up and said temporarily closed to COVID due to COVID. And the staff of the Rubin Engagement Center, who, by the way, were absolutely wonderful, wonderful at engaging and connecting and caring about men and women who were experiencing homelessness, the staff were diverted to go work at a quarantine safe recovery site hotel. So the guys and gals that were dying from addiction that desperately wanted help, that door was closed to them. Unless you had some type of risk for COVID or impact of COVID, the city of Indianapolis, all of our homeless have not had any detox at all since April 10th. We've been fighting to
Wow.
try to get that back, but what the city came up with is we've got over 3,000 signatures on a petition begging for this to change. The city said due to the transmission and the risk of the coronavirus that they're eventually going to figure out how to detox in the hotel. Now, think about this. We have a building that I don't even know how big it is. It's 3 floors, and it used to be uh, at a processing center. It's huge, and we're only talking 30 beds. $1 million were put into the building just 3 years ago, but instead of letting the staff continue to serve the guys and gals at Rubin and socially distance, we've shut it down for 90 days. So that's probably over 1,000 people that couldn't get help, and probably several died. And now we're working on trying to figure out how to bring them to a private hotel room. So imagine this. I'm hours off of drugs and alcohol. I'm homeless. I have depression, anxiety, untreated mental illness, and you're going to stick me in a hotel room and tell me to just say no. Whereas at Rubin, I could engage with staff. I could engage with my peers. I don't have to be within 6 feet of them. I'm just really frustrated and upset, and it's just so much discrimination to do with homelessness, to do with addiction, and it's just more examples of criminalizing homelessness. It's just a horrible situation here.
Well, it's funny because I was actually kind of on the scene back in Indianapolis when
Yep.
they were promising the Rubin Engagement Center. Indianapolis has this, in my opinion, I'm not speaking for anyone but myself, Indianapolis has this weird relationship with their homeless where they're almost like drunks. The town's almost, the government is almost like a bunch of drunks, where they get intoxicated on the notion of being good guys.
Yes.
And then they make all these promises. Oh, we're going to have a homeless bill of rights. And then the next day they sober up and they yank the homeless bill of rights. Oh, well, we don't want to use, it's stupid to use our police and our emergency rooms this way. Like they can't catch COVID. It's stupid to use our police and emergency rooms this way. We're going to give you the Rubin Engagement Center. All the problems will be solved because we're the heroes. The first time their addiction is challenged, the first time their addiction to being the heroes is challenged, they go back on their old drug, which is throwing everybody out in the street and turning them over to the cops again. And it's really a really weird sort of metaphor for them, because you see them trying to do the right thing. You see them saying, "Oh well, we're gonna get what was that, diamond or triangle or whatever it was, housing. We're gonna get housing through people's health insurance, and then we're gonna get these people off the street that way." And then all they do instead is just burn down a camp and throw everybody out. And pretend that it's like they sober up and realize that they're just jackasses after all. And I don't want to make your life more difficult in Indianapolis, but they really need to stick with this commitment. If you have the Rubin Engagement Center and you have the way to take people's temperature and you have the way to socially distance, you can't say because a person might have COVID that it's okay that they die of their addiction. You can't say one epidemic runs the risk of eliminating all the other epidemics that we know are killing people.
You know what? I feel like there's got to be more to this story. I mean, I get it. Government and politicians do a lot of things that make no sense. But I remember back when the Davidson Street camp was closed and Don and Tim did their movie and starred Maurice and things like that. And the whole thing was, I think they charged 68 homeless people as they scattered them from the camps with, I don't know, blocking traffic or something. But come to find out, that property had been sold for development. So it makes me wonder, is the Rubin Engagement Center, which they just put $1 million in, somebody said, you know what, I bet that prime real estate is worth 20 plus million today. Because there's no conversation at all. There's none at all. There was no notice. There was no discussion. There was no protest from, Chip, who is charged with homeless advocacy for the city. Chip didn't even respond to an email asking for help. There's been nothing said by anyone except Pastor Green, Judge Serto. Everybody else is like crickets.
Are you getting any feedback on your petition?
We've gotten 3,300. We've got over 3,000 signatures.
But is the city responding to that?
The city's response is kind of this token response that I've got recorded that says, we are listening to healthcare professionals, and in light of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are looking into options, and we are trying very hard to offer Rubin services in a soon-to-be announced hotel. That's their response, and they say it under the guise of, our hands are tied. This is COVID-19, but yet, wait, the missions didn't close. Pathway managed to operate. And the Rubin Center, we're talking 30 beds. Pat, it's the size of a gymnasium for 30 beds. We can't even bring in 15. I mean, something else is going on.
Can't put up plexiglass to protect us. Well, we're going to follow this. I'm going to keep up with you on this because I'm really concerned about this whole thing. And the work you've done is so beautiful. But like you said, you bought a building for $10,000 in an area now where it's worth $750,000. Right. If Sandy Jeffers were a different human being, that your $10,000 building might be up for sale right now. But you know, keeping the eye on the prize, keeping the mission in mind. And, you know, people might even try and talk you into it. Look, Sandy, sell that building for $750,000.
They already
You can
have.
go buy, yeah, you can go buy 500 ugly
Yes.
little buildings and do this work all over again. You know, there's this, I don't know. And you know, I don't like to assign villainy, although I think I kind of did a little bit ago.
Sorry,
but
not
I don't.
sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. I don't like to assign villainy to people's motives. So I think sometimes people think they're doing the best thing, and I do know that COVID caught a lot of people in the fright mode.
I agree.
You know, and so there are a lot of people that are genuinely frightened, and what do you do there? But it's interesting because what the pandemic has done in some cases is it's gotten people to open their pockets and put every day in the woods. But it's also made them say, I don't want to deal with this problem anymore. And the problem, when the moratorium on evictions is lifted across the country, this problem could get 10 times bigger.
Right.
You know, because if you're doubled up and the person you're doubled up with also is having trouble paying the rent, then you've got 2 families that are going to get thrown out.
Right.
This is it's such a recipe for disaster. It's unbelievable.
And it's so sad. It could be avoided, and it just makes no sense. I mean, it just makes no sense. And I have no words. I have no words that we're okay with this.
Maybe you can run for mayor.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Pat.
Run for mayor.
Oh, as a matter of fact, no. I'm sorry to say, but I don't have a filter, and transparency to me means telling the truth, even if it's painful. So, yeah, I'm sure that's not going to happen at all. Although I would welcome the chance. To have my own jail, and we would create a therapeutic community, and we would have one area for politicians to where they could maybe experience how our jail really is. But then maybe just those of us that need a helping hand, we would have a work program, and we would have a savings program, and we would pay our child support, and we would transition back into the community, and we would help the new inmates get on their feet. I've got this whole plan because it seems like we don't want to help people, but we don't mind locking them up. So that piece about meet them where they are, okay, give me a jail. So
I'll give you jail. I think that's a great idea.
But Pat, I want to thank you for everything you've done. I love you dearly, and you never give up, and I appreciate that. I really do.
It's people like you that keep me going. I'm like, I gotta stay in the fight because Sandy's fighting so hard. I'm gonna be right there next to her.
And you know what? We have three of these buildings in this prime historic neighborhood where gazillions of dollars are going on. And sometimes I think, well, I'll just drag one to the pawn shop and see if I can get enough money to reopen Reuben. But no, I'm just going to stand tall because the guys and gals we serve, that's me. That's me.
Right. And you're so wonderful. All right. So we're going to check back in with you soon, but thanks so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
You're awesome, Sandy. Talk to you soon.
You are. Thanks, Pat.
Bye.
Bye.